Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever podcast of BHAN League. We don't have a name for it. I don't know if we will have a name for it, but so far it's just the BHAN League podcast. I am BHAN League Hectorox, and today I have with me BHAN League Nerd King.
Hey, I've returned.
And we will be talking about the our tournament that just happened today, a few hours ago, right? Like 2 hours ago? Yeah,
Yeah.
2 hours ago,
Yep.
roughly. And then we'll be talking. So we're going to be talking about that, and then we're going to like the whole rundown with the tournament system thing. Just that way, people have a little bit more clarification on that. Because I think a few people don't understand what's going on. So I think it would be better if we were to describe it. So first things first, out of the way to talk about is the absurdly crazy prevalence of mono blue tempo. Now, considering the fact that we only had like 9 people compete in the tournament, having almost half the decks be mono blue tempo is pretty crazy, in my opinion.
Even for a small sample size, I think it's pretty unusual for us to see like this much prevalence of the mono blue deck.
Yeah, especially since like there wasn't anything that was added. Like from what I'm looking at, it's like literally just Terramander for new stuff. Oh, and then Essence Capture too.
Yeah.
Not some sideboard tech too, but like literally for the most part, it's just the exact same deck that was being played before. Which we had a few people who were playing the exact same deck when we had our first tournament, technically last year. So I guess it's just really interesting to see how much mono blue there is.
Yeah, especially since that last tournament we only had one mono blue player show. And then now all of a sudden in our tournament anyway, it's all over the place.
Yeah, so I mean, when I'm looking at these decks, they all look pretty much the same. I mean, they have the basis of having like their unstoppable 1/1 flyers that they attach Curious Obsession to, and then they have Tricksters, Exclusion Mages, Tempest Djinns, and Wizard's Retort.
Actually, our first place didn't have the bounce mage.
Oh, he did?
I don't think he
Ooh.
did. I mean,
No,
it's
I'm
in his
not seeing it.
sideboard, but I don't think he played any mainboard exclusion mages, which is
That's
odd.
interesting.
Yeah, right? I didn't
Our
notice
second
that
place
before.
also didn't do that.
Okay, so I guess
Our first and no. Our first and second are two different decks technically because the sideboard's different, but for the most part, they're pretty much the same.
Oh, really? Wow, that's pretty close.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's like some like little like one of changes. Like there's a one of S in the first deck in the first place deck, and then there's a two of Essence Capture. So while they're almost identical, there are some slight differences. Um, but yeah, I mean, like it's odd. It's just odd to me seeing so much mono blue tempo because like when I play ladder on arena, I don't see this much mono blue tempo.
No, not even close.
Phoenix decks, I see way more Phoenix decks than mono blue tempo. Like mono blue tempo is just so rare to me when I'm playing on ladder. Um, so it's definitely weird. I mean, especially I'm really surprised that we don't have any Nexus of Fate decks or Red Deck Wins decks. Um,
Yeah, they vanished, which I run into, especially those two decks in ladder on MTGA all the time. Like,
right.
I mean, maybe it's because I'm still a little low elo, but I don't think that's like the biggest part of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know. I mean, again, I don't know exactly what the rank of players that we have competing. So, obviously that's a big thing that could be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
Um, we don't know, how much MTG Arena these people play all that often. So, like a card deck too, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be a deck that they think is the best per se, right? Because they
Yeah.
might not have all the stuff for Nexus of Fate, or I mean, Red Deck Wins is pretty much a really cheap deck, right?
Doesn't it
Yeah, I
like load
mean,
up on rares? Like it's like cheap overall, but like the rare cost is disproportionately high.
mhm.
Yeah, I think that's true with Red Deck Wins.
Well, Red Deck Wins has like two rares in it because it runs. Oh, and also Experimental
Wait,
Frenzy.
sorry, what?
Red Deck Wins. It runs three different rares that they all play as four of.
Oh, right, yeah.
So,
Yeah, so it's like
but
what math? A
sorry,
fifth
I
the
was
deck is
yeah, pretty
rares.
much. So I mean, like it's weird to see so much mono blue tempo. That I guess that's really the big thing
Yeah,
to take away from this.
especially since the matchups we had in our tournament today, like the mid-range decks it matches up best against, but I think overall in the meta, there's a lot of decks that do really well against mono blue tempo.
Hmm. Yeah. Actually, before I forget, I want to congratulate the people first, second, and third. That would go to um, Talking Lion, who got first. Secret Crab, also known as Nat Korch on MTG Arena, who got second, and Blinn, who got third. So
Yeah,
figured I'd give a shout out to them.
they owned.
They did
Yeah.
with Mono Blue Tempo, which I honestly, again, was not expecting.
Yeah.
Um,
In case we didn't make it clear, the four mono blue decks we had at our tournament were first place, second place, third place, fourth place. It
yeah,
was a clean out for mono blue.
I I can't even explain why it's like that, but hey, it's how the cookie crumbles, I guess. I mean, I guess probably the reason why Mono Blue did so well was because of the different decks that we're seeing play today. Because when we look at the different decks, right, we're looking at black green mid range with splashing blue for Hydrate Crisis, uh, an Esper mid range deck, and then a white weenie deck. So, like, I mean, yeah, they have like removal and stuff, right? But like, for the most part, like black green mid range is just about playing bigger things. So if mono blue tempo can just like go underneath them or like just swing with a bunch of flyers, which black green mid range has a very high lack of flyers, then they would clearly be the victor there.
Yeah, mono blue is like probably the best deck in the format right now for punishing you for just playing big good things, like which is exactly what the mid-range decks want to do. It's so you it was just so even though there were only two mid-range decks, it performed so well against those mid-range decks that it just took over.
Right. And I mean, obviously, it wasn't just because of the fact that our mono white weenie deck that was in there only like got last place. So clearly, it wasn't the fact that it was the evasion on these creatures because all of Mono Blue Tempo's creatures either A have flying or blockable.
Yeah.
And the rest of the decks that saw play didn't really like the Esper midrange deck that just Lola played, had flyers in it, but didn't have flyers that could compete or like win, like so that could trade into them without dying, right? So
Yeah, and he who probably would you say had like the best flyers of the non-mono blue decks? He took fifth, I believe. He was like right under all the mono blue decks.
no, he took sixth
Oh, did
actually.
he? Okay, my bad.
Yeah, yeah, just getting beaten out by Mob Boss, who played the black green mid range deck with Splashing for Hydrate Crisis, but only because of opponent win percentage.
Okay, so they
So
were like neck and neck.
right, they were neck and neck. So technically, like it's like fifth or sixth, right? So like he still did well. right? He just didn't play against all the mono blue tempo decks that did well.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, I mean, I guess I guess so. The reason why we didn't see mono blue tempo getting beaten was because I think the removal package over wasn't great for the other decks, right? Because if you can't beat a flyer in the air or you can't kill them, then obviously you're going to lose to. So if you don't have things like shock to respond to a curious obsession with, or lava coil, or I mean even having things like cast down.
I-
What's that?
Or in like for the Nexus decks, fog, just to avoid worrying about
Oh
the problem altogether.
yeah, I mean the next decks also run like dispose deploy, all as great ways to block flyers and also gain life.
Yeah.
So it's just really interesting to see that disparity, and it kind of is clear on why Mono Blue won. Though look at the of who was playing,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
So it makes sense, and I guess, and what's also interesting, actually, looking at it, the the first and second place actually won with only 19 deck, while third and fourth had like 20 then 21 islands. So it seems like the less and less islands they played, the more streamlined they were, so they had more gas in there.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That would help
So
probably a
that's
lot in the mirror, right? Which is
yeah. So
really
in the
good.
mirror, right, you want the suggestion to always hit gas. You want every single one of your draws to be really good. So having more spells to play, more essence scatters, I think probably essence scatter is a really important card in the mirror. Which, funny enough, the first place deck only had one essence scatter, but um, I mean, if I'm looking through their deck, I mean they have the exclusion mages they could freeze they could have brought in. Um, all great stuff. Um, I don't know. It like I said, it's just weird to see so much mono tempo.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it was certainly an interesting tournament. Hopefully next time we'll get even more people. We'll get some even more interesting results. I'd like to hopefully see something other than mono blue.
right? I like for once I'd actually like to see mono red be good. um, I mean, yeah, I think I mean looking at like other decks that people are playing just overall in MTG, like in standard, normal, standard, paper standard, and MTG Arena. I mean, decks that are seeing play there are like Nexus, Fate decks. The Boros aggro deck is doing pretty well. Red deck wins, and Phoenix decks, and we saw we saw none of those. Like, and those are some of the top competing decks right now. So again, it could be based on just these players' collections, but I don't know. It seems like they just all knew what to do because they all clearly had the same game plan because they all had pretty much the exact same deck.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it is interesting too. I wonder if maybe it was related to our last tournament, maybe not, but the second place player back we only had one mono blue deck and it took second. So I wonder if
mhm.
between then our last tournament a couple months ago or whenever and now
Mhm.
it like mono blue just became a more known deck, like more people were excited to be playing Tempest Gen.
Yeah, that I guess that would make sense, right? Because we pretty much had the exact same pool of people from the last tournament playing in this one.
Pretty close, yeah.
Um, we had some new people, but for the most part, it was like a returning crew. So it could have been that it's all mono blue tempo, and they just liked the deck. They started playing it over the course of like the month in between tournaments, and then come to show up to this one, they decided to bring it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to talk about though these different decks that we weren't seeing, and maybe convince people to play these decks because I think there's a lot of really cool decks that could see play that people could have played
Yeah.
that people just didn't play, right? Like I mean, as much as I don't want to talk about it, I think that Nexus of Fate should have been way up there. Um, like personally for me, like Nexus of Fate decks, I mean they're all pretty much the same deck because they all have of Fate. Um,
Yeah, I mean, once you put Nexus of Fate in your deck, you basically have a game plan.
right.
You put two
Um,
islands and four Nexus of Fate in a mono red deck, and you have a new game plan.
right. You just completely change what. Um, but I mean, like, so looking at, so like knowing different Nexus of Fate decks, right? Like the one that has like Teferi as a win condition, which is interesting. The versions that I've been playing have more of a gate focus to really utilize well with.
Sorry,
Um,
what?
so like the different so like there's different Nexus of Fate decks, right? So like the one that I have that I'm looking at right now
Yeah.
is like more of a Bant style deck with Teferi as the win condition,
Okay.
while the version that like I play has more gates in it and plays the gate explosion card, the one that deals X damage.
No. Oh, that one.
Di-
Gates Ablaze? Is that
yeah,
what it's called?
Gates of Blaze. There we go. Yeah. So like I play that one, and my is getting a bunch of mana with Wilderness Reclamation, burn somebody down with an expansion explosion. Um, so I think it's interesting that even though there's multiple different types of Nexus of Fate, again, we still didn't see one version of it.
Right. None. It was.
Because like the one that I'm talking about could take down Mono Blue Tempo really easily because it has red for all the burn spells to just burn out any creature deck,
Yeah, plus,
right?
if they don't have a counter ready, Merfolk, or not Merfolk, Mono Blue just dies to a board wipe, basically. I mean, I guess Tempest Djinn will probably survive, but you know, can't beat them all.
Right, but I mean, even then, Tempest Djinn only has like four tough.
Yeah, four
Yeah, four
toughness.
toughness. So when you gates ablaze on turn 4, you probably have 4 gates.
Yeah, which is that's just exactly on curve for Gates.
Right. Or even freaking lava coil. Lava coil kills every creature
Yeah.
in mono blue tempo. So like so I mean again, that brings us to like red deck wins, which could I think red deck wins because I haven't really played red deck wins against I think red deck wins would win in that matchup.
I think so too, but I'm no expert either. It is
Well, I
kind
mean,
of interesting since mono red doesn't have any of the evasion that mono blue does. So
mhm.
maybe there's an argument for mono blue, but I really think the removal for mono red puts it over the top for the
Yeah,
matchup.
so I mean, like you have Chain Wheeler, which is essentially a board wipe against,
Yeah.
um, and then like I said, you have cards like Shock, Lightning Strike, Skewer the Critics, Wizard's Lightning that most of the time you want to be hitting their with, but if you really need to, you can hit their creature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you play like things like Lava Coil, and this, so you can turn into a more controlly version against Mono Blue Tempo because clearly I think in the Mono Red you want to hedge a little bit more towards removal because simply because like Mono Blue Tempo, if left unchecked, could just take you down,
Oh yeah.
right?
And
Um,
also to like Merfolk has the better draw, but red has experimental frenzy, which isn't bad card advantage.
yeah, I mean, experimental frenzy is amazing. I mean, when you drop down an experimental frenzy, it's really hard for a lot of decks to compete with that, especially if you get a lot of good cards off the top of your deck. Obviously, if you keep hitting land after land, it's gonna suck.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like it's hard to stop an experimental frenzy. It's hard to win against it once it gets rolling. Um, but I mean, another deck that we had people register, but we didn't have people actually like get into the tournament because they didn't check in. But we had like two different Boros aggro decks.
Yeah, those would have been
Um,
cool. I would have liked to see those actually get to compete.
yeah. I mean, I wanted to see more white decks in general because History of Benalia is just a great card.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I think would have also done really well against a lot of these against like Mono Blue Tempo
Well,
because you can kind of outrace them, kind of.
it is interesting though, because you are kind of forced to be the aggressor when you're in
Hmm.
this matchup. Like you can't wait for them to do anything. Because if you don't kill them, then they'll just duck under your creatures. There's not much under or above. There's not much blocking you can do really in this matchup.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you either a have the removal suite to be able to be on the defensive, or you try and be faster than them, which I think is reasonable to do.
Yeah, you should
Um,
like the ideal game plan is like turn 3 history, and when history pops, you just try win that turn, right?
right.
Get the
Yeah,
buff
you
win.
just go right. You just go all out. You deal like 8 damage in a turn. Big swings. Um, I mean, yeah, I think I think that is their game plan. Um, but another deck that would have also done really well is the Phoenix decks or the Drake decks. Sorry, Blue Red Drakes. Um, I mean, with having Crackling Drake and Enigma Drake being really good win conditions, um,
And they have
that
Terramancer who would probably do some work to help buy time.
yeah, Terramander is actually
Terramander, right?
I think is a lot better in the Drake stuff because of the fact that you can toss so many cards into your graveyard that you can easily what's the keyword for it adapt it,
Adapt. Yeah.
and then it becomes a 5/5 which can trade with a Tempest
Tempest.
Chin.
Yeah. That would be
And
cool.
yeah, it's like overall all of their creatures can block and kill the Tempest Chin as long as they have 4 power,
It's like
right?
the only deck that can actually try and compete with Mono Blue in the air, which is neat.
Right. Yeah. And I mean even looking at like their removal suite, I mean they play shocks, they play a bunch of different or they play spell pierce as some of their counters, and beacon bolt,
Yeah,
which is great.
it's like basically Mono Blue and this deck are pretty similar, actually. It's just the difference between like the slightly less consistent mana base and a little bit slower from the red blue in trade for some of the lava coils and shocks.
Right, yeah. For the most part, they have a very similar game plan of dropping a number of flyers and having a removal suite to stop against more aggressive decks, and drawing through their deck to get the cards they want.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I mean, even like their sideboards are very similar too, because the sideboard of a blue red Phoenix or blue red Drake deck has like two entrancing melodies, which if I'm looking at almost every one of these lists that we saw in our tournament, they had two or sometimes even one is just a common card amongst those, which
Yeah.
is obviously good against. I mean, anything with smaller creatures, right? You like for just 5 mana, you can take the Odin's Drake, or you can take their Tempest Gin. So it's just like it's a flexible card. Um, I mean, yeah. So just looking at that, I think I think blue. If we saw a Drake deck, I think the Drake deck probably would have done a little bit better, or would have done better than the blue tempo
It
decks.
would have at least stood a chance. At least.
Yeah, I think with what we had running in the tournament, um, it probably if we really broke it down, mono blue tempo would have done really we would have ultimately came to that conclusion
Yeah.
because there's no way to stop it. But for those who want to be playing next week, have ways to stop this because clearly people want to be playing this deck. Have lava coils, play red decks.
Or
A deck that
have
I can
some kind
suggest
of
people. Yeah, even having your sideboard have some decent amount of removal.
Thinking about board
Like
wipes, thinking about anything that can give you a non-blocking way to beat this deck.
yeah. I mean more specifically there wasn't a lot of red decks too, which red is really where the good removal suite against blue tempo
Yeah,
is.
generally, yeah.
So having only a Boros midrange deck, or we didn't have Boros midrange.
We almost did.
We had we had no red decks actually looking at it who
None?
actually competed. So I mean
What?
there you go.
Come on, red is a good color. Red's really good right now in a lot of different types of decks. It
Yeah, and one of those decks that plays red that would probably have done really well is Mardu Humans, a deck that I personally really like, or at least I haven't played a whole lot of it, but every time I think about the deck, I'm like I should be playing this deck because I think it's really good.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
they have
yeah,
flyers,
it's got
right? Flyers.
they
I think
actually
it has some
don't.
kind of afterlife, right?
Yeah, it has Afterlife, so technically it has flyers,
Sort of.
but
Sort of flyers.
it's only well actually technically
Oh, really?
one main board card with Afterlife. Um, but I mean, it has a good main board suite of removal with Final Payment, Bedevil, and Mortify. At least the list that I'm looking at. Um,
Oh, right, and they
and
just sack a
then,
creature to the final payment in this matchup, probably.
mhm.
Yeah.
And I
Fanatical
mean, even then,
Firebrand is great against Merfolk.
yeah, yeah, that's essentially your blocker against Mono Blue Tempo, right?
Or,
Against the 1/1 flyers in particular, because
or
it can kill something with Curious Obsession on it.
yeah, or not with it on it. Don't forget, Curious Obsession gives +1/+1.
Oh, so I guess in response,
Yeah,
then.
which is awesome. Get their creature, get their +1/+1, and it can be ready as much as you want it to be. It's instant speed, it's free, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, even looking at this deck too, because it has so many ways to just essentially poop out onto the board a bunch of little tiny guys, and then just plays a Judith, the Scourge Diva, and just pumps them all up.
Yeah,
Um,
and interestingly, is that with this deck, it's not just Fanatical Firebrand that can throw out pieces of 1 damage. Judith throws out 1 damage. Footlight Fiend, 1 damage to any target. You have a lot of options for small poke with this deck.
yeah, so you can kill a lot of things with one toughness. And then you have those straight up removal spells like Mortar for the Tempest Gin. So I think if anybody's interested in playing something that's off path, but that could compete against what was brought last or this week, would be this deck.
Also, I want to point out, this deck has kind of an interesting sideboard, I think. It gets to play Duress, which is cool. I don't think we see as much Duress, but it still seems pretty good. It has Aurelia in the sideboard for, I guess, a little bit bigger, would be my guess. To be a little more...
I think that's mainly for
Sorry, what?
I think it's mainly for when you know your opponent's coil, and so you play Aurelia, who just doesn't die to lava coil.
Oh yeah, right.
So it's a 4/5 flyer that's harder to stop.
There you go. Yeah, that makes sense.
And even then it can board in Theater of Horrors in a controlling matchup to just have so much late game potential. You know, essentially drawing so many cards with it.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be definitely. I think next week, if people are looking at what was played last week or this week, then I think people could really things could really change. I guess is the better way to put it of putting it.
Yeah, it's not that
Um,
mono blue is a bad deck. I think mono blue is a pretty decent deck. I really do. It's just there are
right.
other options.
Yeah. So we'll definitely see what as time goes on. I think for the most part we pretty much covered everything for the tournament. I don't know if you have anything last to say.
Yeah, so let's see. We have scheduling stuff somewhere.
Oh yeah, so for the next couple weeks, all the way up until let's see, until May the 4th, we have events planned
Yep.
for this season.
Every 2 weeks is the general rule. There's pretty much a tournament every 2 weeks. So the
Yeah.
next one is on is it the 17th? 23rd. I
Um,
was
yeah,
close.
23rd. Close enough. Close enough. So yeah, we'll have the next tournament will be on February 23rd. After that would be March 9th, then March 23rd, and then April 6th. Then April 20th is when the season finale for the season of the Tarmogoyf will happen.
Which is
And
you should
then,
all be very excited about. It's gonna be great. Um, so you are earning all these events that we're doing these next few sets of weeks are getting you points to lead up into our season finale, which should hopefully be really
yes.
exciting. We're looking forward to it. And the more people sign up for the preliminary events, the better, the more interesting it's gonna be.
Yeah, so how the season finale is, so every tournament you compete in, you will at least get 1 point. So, there's a little bit of incentive on getting into. However, the top or eighth place and higher get even more points. If I remember correctly, it's first place gets 20 points, which is crazy.
Yeah,
You know,
that's at the very least a very, very good start to getting into the season final if you've won a tournament.
right. So right now, Talking Lion has a huge advantage over the rest. Right. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking leaps and bounds because second place gets 16 points, third place gets 14 points, fourth place gets 12 points, fifth place gets 8 points, sixth place gets 7 points, seventh place gets 6 points, and eighth place gets 5 points. So even getting eighth place, right, which some people might not even consider that good, still gives you 5 points, which when you only get 1 point for participating, it's like as if you've competed every week of the tournament or of the season
Yep.
for just getting eighth place. And that doesn't even include the more points you get throughout the season.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, so it should be great. We're looking forward to it. And you my advice is to get in sooner rather than later for these tournaments cuz they the fewer people, if you get in earlier, there's going to be less people, and if there's less people, it's going to be a lot easier competition to shoot for these top 8 slots. I mean, we didn't have that many people today, so a lot of people walked away with points.
Right. I mean, yeah, so since we only had 7 people technically compete, right? Like all of them got good points. And so the more tournaments they compete in, the better they get.
Yep.
Um, so get in as soon as you can because like bagging an eighth place win will be very beneficial compared to everyone else,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I don't know if I clarified that the season players with the best points of the season will get invited to the season finale. The season finale, we're looking into hopefully being able to actually commentate on those. We want to commentate on matches if we can sooner because it makes things a lot more interesting for us. and for you guys too, because we could do something on Twitch where we're talking about games live, which I think would be a great opportunity just to really like showcase players' capabilities of being able to do well, right?
Yeah.
But another thing to consider too is there's also a $20 prize pool for each tournament. Like
Sure.
at the end of the day, like yeah, so the points, right? They're free points. It's a free tournament, but if you do well enough in the top three players all get prize points or all get actual money,
Yeah.
like real life
Free
money.
tournament, real life money. That's a good deal right there.
Yeah. So far though, looking into the season finale, we don't have this pool set up currently yet for it, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to have that because clearly we're going to want to reward these players for doing well throughout the
Absolutely.
season. So the season finale, again, we don't have an exact prize pool for it, but it will be relatively large, I imagine, and hopefully will include maybe some extra things other than just money. Depending on how well sponsorships go with what we're looking into. Um, so like I said, this is a whole season thing. This season is called the season of the Targoid. We are planning on two other seasons before the end of the year, nicknamed Season of the Pyromancer and Season of the Gravecrawler. Um, we have dates set up currently for those, but we're not releasing them yet because we want to give ourselves a little bit extra time. So if things mess up or something, we can change dates. So we don't want to hype people up too much, but we want to give them at least this season for the dates.
Yeah, and
Um,
these dates should be they're subject to change. They are, but they should be pretty locked in. Our very strong expectation is that those are the dates that are they're going to be tournaments.
yeah, exactly. There's a very unlikely chance if they do, it'll be like from Saturday to Sunday maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
something like that.
but for the most part, they'll be the exact same. And the tournament that I'm actually pretty excited for is the Band League Festival that will be happening after. So between each season, we're going to essentially have a month break for all the players and for us as a staff to kind of, recoup and get everything ready for the next season and whatnot. So the Band League Festival is essentially just a fun tournament. There's not going to be a prize pool incorporated with it. It's free, and it's going to have essentially special rules, right? So
Yeah,
the
we're gonna
tournament
try
could
and come
either
up
be
with some clever things to do. Maybe some sort of tier decks or banned tournament or other special rules. It's up in the air still. It's a long way. It is a long ways away, but yeah, we're excited about that too. It should be fun. It should be a blast.
right. Exactly. Like if you wanted to bust out Weed Popper deck that you think is, then boom, we might have a Popper tournament then, right? I mean, if you have crazy ideas for it, hey, shoot us up with them. We're open for that because that's supposed to be like just a time for people just to have fun. You don't get any points for it, so it's literally just for your enjoyment.
Yeah.
And again, hopefully by then we will have spectators. We can actually like watch these matches and have some entertainment because I think everything's better with some kind of. So
Absolutely.
hopefully we can bust out the kinks with that by that point. I imagine either MTG Arena will offer or we'll be able to find our own way to do spectator.
Yeah.
So
Um.
hopefully that works.
Also, let us know what you think about this podcast. This is something we'd like to do sort of regularly. This time it focused a lot on talking about what's going on this season. That's because this is a brand new thing. But hopefully in the long term, we'll be talking more like the first part of this podcast, more focus on the tournament and what happened in it, what the decks are, how you can use this information to your advantage. So let us know what you think. I'm going to put the contact information for Band League in general and maybe some specific to us in the description.
Yeah. So don't forget to check out our Discord. That's where I'll put it.
I'm sorry, say that
That doesn't
again.
mean that we
Say that one more time.
are a lot of our information is posted on our Discord. Check out our Discord. Um, that doesn't mean that we don't post information through our other sources, but for the most part, like the first information you'll get will be through the Discord, and eventually it'll be distributed through our other sources.
Yeah.
So look forward to that.
Plus, in the
Um,
Discord, maybe stay, hang out in our chat. I think we have some fun people in there. Most everyone
yeah,
we've run into seems pretty chill.
yeah, I mean, everybody that's competed in our tournaments has always had pretty much anybody who has really been super, like, I don't know, dickish or anything. So I mean, for the most, hey, come out, talk to us. We'd love to interact with the community more. It's part of the reason why we have this is that way you can put a face to our name, and you know that we're more human, right? So that way you're not just like, oh yeah, these people that exist on the internet. We don't know who they are, but we trust them.
Yep.
Cool. So it opens us up a little bit more to all of you. So yeah, I think for the most part that's everything we have to talk. If
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken.
I think so. So don't forget to check out our tournament in a couple weeks. Lots of links in the description. Check them out. I'm Ban Nerd King. He's Ban Hackterox, right? Still.
Yep, Van Hackrox won't
um,
change.
and yeah, I think hope to see you soon.